The shuffling dead are silenced. We have claimed dominion over the ruins once more.
And welcome back to more Darkest Dungeon. This is episode 8, week 15, getting underway. So we're starting off with a town event here, Devatron. Silence in the crypts. Reports from the hill cottages confirm a welcome reduction in the general air of malaise in and around the old ruins. So this is going to yield a bonus 33% experience, as well as 15% damage in the next quest we do in the ruins. So for each of the 4 main dungeons, the ruins, the warrens, the cove, and the weald, there is a chance each week that you can do a quest which will yield a town event for the next week, which will give you bonus experience and damage in the quest the following week after that in that same dungeon. So for obvious reasons, it's nice if you can time one of these events for the week in which you're going to go into a particular dungeon and face one of the bosses there. And along those lines, in the week prior to this one, I saw that there was a quest available in the ruins, which yielded, among other things, this Silence in the Crypts town event. Accordingly, I was able to acquire that for this week in which we're going to go into the ruins and face the Sonorous Prophet and be able to benefit from the bonus damage. Now, as for our stagecoach analysis here, there's a nice arbalist available. She has Eagle Eye, which is a bonus 5% to crit with ranged, and also Early Riser, which is +2 speed, so long as your torch is above 75 light level. Now, my only dilemma here is that I already have a pretty decent arbalist in my roster, and I'm not sure if I want to get rid of her.
Suffer not the lame horse, nor the broken man. Shoot, bandage, and pillage. The dancing steps of war.
Okay, so obviously I chose to get rid of our existing arbalist and pick up the new one. The only thing that made it kind of tough is that the existing arbalist had a quirk called Unerring, which gives +10% damage to ranged attacks. So in a sense it came down to, do I want an arbalist with bonus damage with ranged attacks, or do I want one with a bonus chance to crit with ranged attacks? Ultimately, though, I just decided, hey, those are both really great quirks for an arbalist, right? I mean, ideally, you would want both of them on the same arbalist, but if you had to have one or the other, then either of them is fine. In the end, what made me go with the new gal is that our old arbalist had 3 really bad negative quirks, and all 3 of them needed to be removed, and that would have taken a lot of time and a lot of gold. Whereas Pippery, the new arbalist, fresh off the stagecoach, only has 1 negative quirk. And yes, it's a bad one, it needs to be removed, but removing 1 is a lot faster and cheaper than having to remove 3. Alright, so as we finalize our party here, you'll notice on the left, under the rewards section, there's this orange bordered, very rare trinket on offer for completing this quest this week. That's called the Dazzling Mirror. And the Dazzling Mirror is a very important trinket, very similar to that Mercurial Salve that we got as a reward for killing the Necromancer Apprentice a few weeks back. It's one of those trinkets that only works against Bloodsuckers, which are the enemy types in the Crimson Court and DLC. So what it does is it gives a big bonus to speed, +4 speed versus Bloodsuckers, and also a +20% chance to stun versus Bloodsuckers. So this is just an absolutely perfect trinket for a Vestal. And keep in mind, you're always going to be taking a Vestal into the Crimson Court areas. And as for why it's so perfect for a Vestal, Remember, a Vestal is your primary healer, so the faster they are, the better. You want them to go before anyone else in your party, especially if one of your party members is about to die to a damage over time attack, right? This way they can heal them, get them off of death's door, and then when they take their turn, the dot ticks and doesn't kill them, or at least it doesn't force them to make a death's door check. And then second, as for the bonus to stun chance, remember Vestals are a stunning class. They use that stun quite a bit. I mean, if nobody needs to be healed, that's pretty much what they're going to do. So all in all, just a really perfect trinket for a Vestal going into the Crimson Court areas. Alright, so we've got our party formed here. We have a Leper, Occultist, Houndmaster, and Musketeer. And I believe this is the first time you're getting to see a Houndmaster in action, which is pretty awesome. They're a great class.
Fan the flames, mold the metal. We are raising an army.
And this is a pretty big time moment here, finally upgrading weaponsmithing at the blacksmith. Which will enable our heroes to purchase weapon upgrades and get those to level 2. And here you'll also notice, after a little heirloom converting, shucking and jiving, we're going to upgrade the furnace, which will reduce the cost of upgrading both our weapons and armor at the blacksmith.
A sharper sword. A stronger shield. Anything to prolong a soldier's life.
Okay, with those upgrades out of the way, we can start purchasing the armor and weapon upgrades for our party. And then here over to the guild, purchasing skill upgrades for the party as well. Now, as for this party composition, this is a little odd. I mean, it's not crazy by any stretch. The Houndmaster can hit any rank. The Musketeer can hit ranks 2 through 4. We have heals, stuns, and some attacks with the Occultist, and we have backup heals with the Musketeer. Leper in rank 1 will just crush enemy ranks 1 and 2, etc., etc. Houndmaster can stress heal. So it's a fine party by all means. However, there's a very specific reason why I chose these 4 and have them exactly in the positions they are, and that has to do with the boss fight. Now, I don't want to spoil the fight for you or anything like that, so I won't go into a lot of detail. But at the same time, I want you to have just a basic understanding of why I chose these heroes for this quest. So at the heart of this strategy and this party composition, you have the Leper and the Occultist. Those two are really kind of the key players here. And it starts with the Leper, who has an ability called Intimidate, which, among other things, debuffs the target's damage output. Okay? So when an enemy is hit with Intimidate, it will be debuffed such that moving forward, it will do less damage to your heroes, right? And similarly, the Occultist has an ability called Weakening Curse, and it lowers the target's protection and then also debuffs the target's damage output. So, as you can probably gather just from that information alone, the Sonorous Prophet is a very hard hitter, and it will be beneficial to reduce his damage output. Now, as for the other two heroes, the Houndmaster and Musketeer, I imagine that you might be able to substitute other classes in for them. But at least from a basic understanding, The Houndmaster stress heals and does range DPS. The Musketeer is a backup healer and does range DPS. But more important, each of them can mark enemies, and they can also do bonus damage versus marked enemies. So that's most likely going to come into play. They're going to synergize well for some high burst range DPS down the line. Now, other than that, the only other thing you might notice is that the Houndmaster has a guard ability, and he's a pretty decent guarder. I tend not to use him in that way because Houndmasters have a relatively low health pool. Now, they do make up for it by having very high dodge, but I much prefer a man-at-arms for guarding roles, because when you guard, you increase the chances that you're going to be the target of an attack, and if one of those attacks does hit, then you want a real beefy man-at-arms with lots of hit points to take the hit instead of kind of a fragile Houndmaster. At any rate, enough with all this theory crafting and analysis. This is our party. This is what we're going with. Let's get in there and take out this Sonorous Prophet, Devatron.
Excavations beneath the manor were well underway when a particularly ragged indigent arrived in the hamlet. This filthy, toothless miscreant boasted an uncanny knowledge of my ambitions and prognosticated publicly that, left unchecked, I would soon unleash doom upon the world. The echoes of his mindless tittering reverberate maddeningly.
Alright, so here we go. As usual, on a boss dungeon, we open the map and we try to see if there is a room that is further than all the others from the starting square. This is an easy map. There is one such room, and it's not that many squares away. It's only like 5 squares away, so this should be a pretty quick run.
Ancient traps lie in wait, unsprung and thirsting for blood.
So this is kind of a funny start. I went past the confession booth initially because nobody had any stress damage and didn't need to be stress healed. And then I walked into a trap. Pont, our musketeer, ended up getting a lot of stress damage, so then I kind of gingerly backed up and used the holy water on the confession booth to thereby heal her stress damage.
Press this advantage. Give them no quarter. Confidence surges as the enemy crumbles. Executed with impunity.
Alright, so off to a good start there, although admittedly kind of an easy fight. The only thing I'll remind you of, though, is that the party is under the effects of the Silence in the Crypts town event. So you may end up seeing some big damage numbers, but remember that's not normal. Those are buffed damage numbers.
The way is lit. The path is clear. We require only the strength to follow it. formation is broken. Maintain the offensive. A brilliant confluence of skill and purpose. Another one falls. As the fiend falls, a faint hope blossoms. As the light gains purchase, spirits are lifted, and purpose is made clear.
Okay, so that fight, much harder. Kind of nasty throwing a madman and a bone courtier at us, which usually equals a ton of stress damage, right? We were able to get through it. The Houndmaster as a stress healer, I just prefer the Jester because I don't like RNG. That said, when you get good RNG with the Houndmaster, he can be a more efficient stress healer, as you saw there, by healing several targets at the same time.
Mind that such missteps are the exception, and not the rule.
Okay, here with this scouting check, you can see that my earlier prediction was correct, that the room furthest from the starting square is the room where the boss is.
Gathered close in tenuous firelight and uneasy companionship.
Okay, so here we are resting using our camping skills, and I choose to prevent a nighttime ambush, as you pretty much should always do. And then I'm going to buff the leper's damage, and then also reduce his stress and buff his accuracy and crit. And then I'm also going to buff his resistances, bleed, blight, move, and debuff resistance. I believe with the last two, I don't really have any meaningful 2 respite point cost camping skills, so I just choose wound care and heal a few more hit points on the leper.
The match is struck. A blazing star is born.
Okay, and here, thanks to the fact that we got some scouting when we entered the last room, I can tell that I don't have any fights in this hallway. So I'm going to go ahead and rearrange my skills on a couple heroes the way I want them for the boss fight specifically.
height, the promise of safety.
All right, here we are. I don't plan on doing any adventuring in this dungeon after the boss, so I'm not afraid to go ahead and use up my resources like food, top people off, holy water, buff everybody up, increase their resistances before the fight, etc. All right, this is it, Devitron, the Sonorous Prophet.
The madman hides there, behind the pews, spouting his mindless drivel. A devastating blow. Masterfully executed. Continue the onslaught. Destroy them all. A singular strike.
Okay, you get the idea, right? He uses prognostication and marks one or two heroes that'll be the target of the later ability called Rubble of Ruin. So this happens every round, and this is why you want to debuff the Prophet and reduce his damage as much as possible, so when Rubble of Ruin occurs and those stones fall from the ceiling, they don't do as much damage.
The ground quakes. Inspiration and improvement. precision and power.
Now, alternatively, you could just try to burst the Prophet down and keep the fight as short as possible so that you don't have to suffer too many of the Rubble of Ruin attacks. Now, that approach is certainly viable. However, it doesn't afford you the opportunity to destroy all the pews like I did, and you'll see why I did that once we get to the end.
Did he foresee his own demise? I care not, so long as he remains dead.
Oh yeah, big time, Devatron. Sonorous Prophet is down. All right, let's have a look at how much these consecrated pews are worth. 2,500 gold each, Devatron. Look at this haul. 14,000 gold. And on to XP and Quarks. Keep in mind we're getting a third more XP because of the Silence in the Crypts event. So plus 6 XP for everybody. Weapon Tinker for Mulace. Who cares? Darkest Dungeon, Devatron. Sonorous Prophet down. Hope you're enjoying the run. We'll see you in the next episode.